Hello from the Dukascopy TV studio in Geneva. We're talking about investment perspectives in Vietnam with Mr. Kevin Snowball. He is CEO of PXP Vietnam Asset Management. Welcome to the studio, Mr. Snowball.
Thank you very much.
So, can you outline the current situation in Vietnam, especially with the impending removal of foreign ownership limits? What would this mean for investors?
Well, I think it's a very important move and something that's been needed for some time, because currently the situation is that Vietnam has foreign ownership limits of 49% for everything except banks and 30% for banks. Now, although the limit for banks is staying, at least for the time being, as of the 1st of September, the foreign ownership limits in non-sensitive stocks, non-sensitive sectors, which is pretty much everything, will be removed in its entirety. So we would imagine that will attract significant new interest from foreign investors who essentially haven't been able to buy the stocks that they've wanted to buy over the last several years, since the bigger or certainly some of the bigger and the higher quality companies have got to those limits, which makes it very difficult to participate in the stock.
And so it will be rather soon, 1st of September 2015. Yeah. So what are the prospects then for investing in Vietnamese stocks?
Well, it's obviously about to get a lot easier because, at the moment, if you want, as a foreigner, if you want to buy stocks which are at the foreign ownership limit, you've got to find a foreign seller. And that is a transaction that happens at a premium to market and generally happens off market. So it will make it'll make the market more transparent, because those stocks will trade within the market, and the prices will be able to find a level at which foreigners are prepared to sell them, as well as sell the stocks as well as buy them. It will, as a consequence of making the market more accessible, we think will create a further upside in the market. So we're just below 650, a level that we haven't breached since back in 2008. So there's plenty of upside, we think, from here as a consequence. And obviously, as stock prices go higher, the market market capitalization increases, and then more people become interested in the market, and it becomes hopefully a virtuous circle, and we continue to see upside for quite some time.
And so you are also offering a fund, and so what would you say, what distinguishes this fund from other options? And
well, it's an open-ended fund, and most of the Vietnam funds, and there are still around 60 of them, most of the Vietnam funds are closed-end. We were the first equity specialist investor. We were the first 100% listed equity investor in Vietnam, and the first to merge a closed-end fund into an open-ended fund, which we've now done twice. So we've combined 3 funds into one to hopefully provide an offering which is differentiated through performance as well as through its structure from the other funds in the market, essentially. And a lot of them are multi-asset, or they specialize in one sector or one area, whereas we're essentially an all-cap listed, Vietnam all-cap listed fund. We are launching a smaller companies fund in September, but for the time being we just manage this fund.
And so the performance, how was it in the last months, in the last year? So you've just brought a chart.
Yeah, well, we've, as you can see, last month we were up 6.3%. That was the end of last month. The 26th of last month was when they announced the removal of foreign ownership limits, so we had a good finish to the month. Year to date, we're a little bit behind the index. The index is up about 6%, I think, now, and we're up about 4.5%. But we would expect to overtake it. As you can see, we do beat the index over pretty much every rolling period. So we would expect that to carry on as a consequence of owning the right stocks, essentially, and roughly 55% of our assets are in stocks which are at the foreign ownership limit, so we would expect those to be the major beneficiaries of the removal of foreign ownership limits, obviously.
So there are interesting possibilities for investors in Vietnam, especially because of the removal of foreign ownership limits in September. What would you also say, why is it a real possibility to invest in Vietnam right now?
Well, other than it getting easier, I mean, obviously through the government making reforms, I mean, the economy is in as good shape as it's ever been, in our opinion. So, you know, over the last 10 years, although with global financial crises, the economy slowed down a couple of times, but, you know, in 2015 we expect to see GDP growth back at 6.5%, and this is getting closer to the average of the first decade of this century at around 7%. You know, we have very low inflation. We have an improving trade picture as Vietnam moves up the value chain and starts to produce electronics rather than you know, low value added garments and footwear, essentially. So the economy is in great shape. The TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, the free trade agreement, includes Vietnam, and it's generally considered that Vietnam will be the major beneficiary of that trade agreement. So, you know, everything really is in Vietnam's favour. I mean, obviously, the world is not necessarily a particularly risk-friendly place at the moment, but I think that you know, Vietnam is a spot which has come through difficulties in the global economy very well. And you know, hopefully that continues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kevin Snowball from PXP Vietnam Asset Management, for being here today.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
And thanks for watching. Do make sure to keep clicking back on the Dukascopy TV website for latest updates and exclusive interviews. Have a great day and see you next time.